Okay, so this is my first book,
Okay.
Here's Good Talk, and I feel like the very first poem in this page, it's called Introduction, and it's literally spelled out like down this way.
Wow. Okay.
And so I will read this one. So Introduction. I fell in love with poetry at a young age because it put words to my emotions. Never before had I experienced the freedom of expression many poets voiced in their poems. Their vulnerability and strength inspired me to try my hand at writing my own poetry. Rhymes and composition came naturally to me as I spilled my heart onto notebook paper. Oftentimes, my journal was the only place I could truly be myself. Depression swallowed me whole as I encountered trauma time and time again. Unimaginable suffering, like a gaping wound, bled me dry. Crying as I wrote poems in the pages of my journal mended my broken heart. This was my awakening. This was when I realized my story should be told. Indebted to my younger self and the courage she showed, I wrote If Tears Could Talk. Only through poetry and prose could I allow myself to be vulnerable. Now, for the first time, I've decided to share my life story with you.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me who you are.
So I am Breanna C. Johnson. I've started this AKA Your Favorite Author because I'm a three-time published author. Poetry is life for me. I write, read, perform, present poetry, and I'm working on building my brand, Queer Black Girl Poet, which is part poetry, part lifestyle blogging, just an open space for people to kind of get a more of an inside view of what my daily life is like or just challenges that I face and people who can relate to that. So that's what I'm currently working on. And then I'm also a part of Poets Portal, which is a collective of poets. And that is fairly new. It's been going on for about a year. I'm all over the city doing all types of collaborations, going to club events. I love creative spaces. So if it's visual art, if it's music, if it's poetry, if it's whatever, you will most likely find me there. So I am a true creative at heart.
Okay. Uh, what got you into poetry to begin with?
So I was curious about poetry in middle school. We had like a section of poetry in our library, and they were going to host an open mic. And one of the librarians went up, she was setting up the microphone and she was explaining the concept of it to us. And she went up and read a poem. Can't tell you who the poet was, what the poem was, but I was just like struck by the poetry itself. I was like, oh, that's a really cool way to like express yourself. And I wanted more of it. And so that's what got me started in poetry.
Okay. I've been noticing like a lot of the younger generation and even some of my generation, African American people, like we are really embracing the arts, the
Yes.
poetry side, writing, books, creative filmmaking. Yeah, it's kind of something that I didn't, when I was growing up, I really didn't see a lot of that. Well, when I was younger, within my 20s, I didn't see a lot of that. Maybe I missed it for some reason, but it's like this huge, like, just like free space where people now are starting to embrace their artistic expression side. Um, how many people would you say are um, within your circle? How many people would you say are like embracing the arts? Do you see a lot of people in your age groups along with you doing that?
Yes, I would say of the people that I engage with and that I communicate with, more than half are creatives, like whether they're doing music, visual art, or just some form of it, or even people who are just interested. Like they say like, oh, I'm not a creative. I think everybody is a creative to an extent, but they love to go see the plays or the poetry shows, whatever. So I think that has a lot of influence on me too, as far as who I make connections with, who I interact with. If you mention something that has to do with a creative space, it's like, oh, that's, you got my attention. Like, let's talk.
Okay. Well, hopefully that's the reason why you came to my show. One of the reasons is that maybe you've seen that I was kind of embracing, podcasting and,
Yeah.
minor filmmaking and stuff like that. So thank you for coming on the show. I mean, I really appreciate it. This show is just all about learning about people, seeing different ways that they express themselves or hearing their stories. It's really just an open space, like we discussed a second ago before we got rolling. Um, so, how did you grow up? What was your background like growing up?
Yeah, so thank you for the invitation. I do like that you talk to people of all different types of backgrounds and just kind of get to know what it is that they do and who they are. So my background growing up, it was a little bit tough, kind of complicated. I grew up in a very loving home, two-parent household. They've been married my entire life. But as a kid, it was very not super strict, but Christian, Methodist Christian specifically, and that didn't necessarily mesh with being a queer child. So there were some issues there growing up, and I didn't have an outlet at that time for a while. I knew that this was who I was, but I wasn't fully sure like how to put it to words necessarily. So there was a lot of tension, especially as I got older into my adolescence where I had tension specifically with my dad. So good childhood, great parents. There was just, issues. Everybody has that. So
Yeah. Now, was your father like anything to do with like the church? Was he a church-minded person, or like I hear a lot of like, for some reason, I hear a lot of kids who are, I guess the term is queer, right?
mhm.
Um, that come from homes that were heavy in the church, or maybe dad was a reverend, or mom was this. Did you have any? Did your parents have any affiliation, like deep committed affiliation with the church, or were you just a Methodist family?
I would say we're mostly a Methodist family. My dad took on somewhat leadership roles, and I did too eventually, like liturgist. He was a part of the accounting side, so he handled the money and would deposit it into the bank account. So he had some responsibilities in the church, but it wasn't like some of the denominations where you have like deacons or reverends and you're up in the pulpit kind of thing. Ours is a little bit different. My dad is a very devout Christian, and but I wouldn't say he's necessarily strict like some denominations that I've seen or experiences I've had with people who from different denominations. But he did view being queer as a sin. So it was like to save me from that, it was like, oh no, none of this as long as you're living in the house. And that was where the tension came from.
Okay, so is it safe to say that you weren't totally embraced, like even like well let me ask this, are you embraced now? Does your family embrace you now? Do they, give you that love that you need, regardless of who you are with or who you want to be as far as being a queer person? Do you get that type of support that you need?
Yes, for the most part. My dad has come a long way. I don't
Okay.
think that it will ever be 100% where I would like it to be, but I've come to this place now. I mean, I'm 28 and it's
Hmm.
just a place of acceptance. I know my dad loves me. There's no question. I love him. So, we're not always going to see eye to eye with certain issues. And it's not just related to queerness, there are other things that cause tension as well. But my dad and I are just two different people. So I understand it.
Well, it sounds like you're very mature in the way that you are approaching this, not looking at the glass half empty. Because, I mean, let's be honest, with parents, it's always something. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you're a queer individual. It could be you got the wrong type of boyfriend that your father doesn't approve of,
Mhm.
or you're not pursuing the career goals that your parents thought that you should be doing. You know what I mean? It's all these. It's always some type of conflict. I think that's a part of growing up and maturing and actually breaking out of the nest as a kid. I know it was for me. Things that I didn't accept at home. I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm just going to go out into the world and, figure it out myself. So I think the biggest thing is that your parents and you have found a way to still love each other, right?
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
huge. I hear a lot of people in the context of what we're talking about. Oftentimes, they feel as though they don't have much support at all. But as I'm talking to them, they're telling me things that doesn't necessarily fit that narrative. It just seems like they are looking for this huge amount more than what that person, that family member is willing to give them. They're not accepting the love that's already there, that's in place. So
Right.
yeah, I think that's really cool that you embrace it like that. Um, what was the earliest age when you found out, like, damn, I'm queer?
As early as like preschool, kindergarten, really, like I think at that age you have like these little like crushes or whatever. You're not necessarily acting on anything because you don't know what that is exactly. And there would be like little girls who would talk about like, oh, like this such and such is cute, talking about a boy. And I would feel the same way about other girls in my class, but I just didn't understand it. Like there weren't other girls who were saying that about, each other. So it was just kind of like, okay, I don't know what this is. And as I grew up and went further into school, that's when I was like, oh, okay, like I started to understand like I have this for both.
Right.
Essentially, yeah.
Have you dated like men before, or?
Yeah, my current partner actually is a man.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you are bisexual.
I just identify as queer because there's the labels that have like specifics around it because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just attracted to cisgender individuals, which is typically what bisexuality is. I'm attracted to trans people. I'm attracted to gender nonconforming people. I'm attracted to a lot of different types of people. So queer for me is just the easiest. It's the full umbrella term. There is no label. There is no check boxes. It's just this is who I am.
Okay, so is the guy who you're dating, is he a queer person as well?
No, he's not. He identifies just cisgender straight man.
Okay.
So we've known each other for since we were like 11 years old.
Okay.
So we kind of like grew up together. We were together and then we weren't. So we've known each other for a long time.
Right.
And he knows me at my core. I'm a very faithful, loyal person, regardless of who I'm with. So there is no swaying me either way. When I'm with somebody, I'm with them, and the only people who could break us up is us. So
Mm-hmm.
he's fully trusting of me, and I am of him. We've had our bumps definitely,
Mm-hmm.
and overall, I would say throughout the years, he's become more accepting because I'm like, if we were to have a family, be open to the option that your child could be queer, your child could be trans. Like I want to make sure that that door is open for my kids regardless because I know what I experienced when I wasn't allowed to express that. um so yeah, that's very important for me to have a partner who is accepting.
I'm sure when you brought him over, your dad probably gave him the biggest, warmest embrace, picked him up, kissed him on his head. Because he said, like, he said if they had a problem with you being, bisexual or queer to start, he was probably like, oh, wow, this is new. Okay, come on in, son. Uh,
Yeah.
Parents are crazy, you know.
Yeah.
Most parents have done the wildest shit, and then when they get older, they get to this high road where now that always cracks me up because when our parents get older, they get closer to religion, you know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that in my opinion, they get very close to religion, and then they start really following the Bible like word for word for word, and making judgments upon everybody else, when they've done all of the same shit that we've done when they've done when they were kids. So it's unfortunate. But man, there's this huge like scientific debate going back and forth. I'm sure you've heard of it. Is it nature versus nurture when it comes to being an LGBTQ person? My personal thoughts is that if it's expressed in nature, it's probably expressed in human beings as well, since we are a part of nature. And
Right.
I've taken the time to do a little research before we've had our pot before we were doing this today, and I did find some startling, facts about the nature side of things. Like there are 2,000 species of animals who have what's the word I'm looking for here? Relationships with the same types of animals. I'm not a
Yeah.
scientist at all. Homogenous. I'm probably talking about
That,
eggs or
yeah.
something. If you want me to, I'm gonna use the wrong term. So they have homosexual relationships with each other, meaning that they have bonds with the same animals. And some that they mentioned were like tigers and lions, giraffes, dolphins, bonobo apes, and this huge list of animals that you wouldn't even think. So, like I said, I think if it's expressed in nature, if it's a part of history, it actually is just something that is a natural occurring phenomenon. And I would think that most times when people, make these harsh points about a person, learning to be LGBTQ, and that, it's just a way to break off from Christianity and all these different things that people come up with. I think they're missing those main points, that it's all around us. It never has not been a part of life. So therefore, it's a natural thing. I don't know. I wouldn't know how a gay person responds growing up, right? Because I'm not a gay person. But
Yeah.
that's why it's kind of interesting to me to learn, like, when did you first start feeling these feelings? Because it seems like it's something that's just inherently, it might even be genetically passed down, like I heard in some of the different arguments that it's a genetic thing.
Mhm.
Um, so, what do you think that it's a side of the? Do you think it's a nurture side of the debate as well, or do you think it's all natural?
You know, I honestly think it just is natural to me. Like, what's this, Lady Gaga, Born This Way? Like, I genuinely think that there are just some people who are queer, and there is no explanation, there is no turning point. I think a lot of people, well, let me not say a lot, but there are some people who believe that people are queer because of a trauma that they've experienced, and that's not always the case. There are people who just, since they were born, and as they're starting to socialize, they start to realize things. And there's like, okay, but they may not have the words for it. And as they get older and they learn the words for it, that's when they realize, oh, okay, so this is what this is called.
Right.
That's what happened for me anyway. So I think it's more nature. And there's studies that they've done for like gay couples who adopt kids, right?
Right.
And they're worried about like, oh well, if a gay couple adopts a child, that child is going to end up gay. And there's kids who are heterosexual who are gay also. Like, it just, I don't think that the nurture side of it, when it comes to that, has much of an influence.
Mhm.
They may be more open, more accepting, because they're around spaces that most heterosexual children or heteronormative children don't get to
Okay.
experience. But yeah, I don't know, I feel like it is a natural thing.
Okay, fair enough. I have noticed that on the other side there are some studies, some psychological studies, empirical, that correlate people who are homosexual or LGBTQ to certain events that have happened in their lives or certain influences. So I do think it's a side that is, to some degree influenced. But I think even like I'm around it all the time. I'm not influenced. You know what I mean? I think it
Right.
has to be something inside of you. I don't think anything can force me to do something that I do not necessarily want to do, influence or not, unless it's like drug induced influence or something like that. But yeah, I think that if you are, you are. But I mean, I'm sure there are factors that can promote, you actually being more open to doing that or not. But yeah, so that's interesting to me. I thought you'll be the first LGBTQ person on my show, so clap, clap, clap. I am happy. When I did my show before with the lady who I told you about, Dior, she was talking to me about how like down in she was doing hair shows, doing hair
Mhm.
modeling and stuff like that, and she was talking about the LGBTQ influence from the male side, and I was like, man, I got to get one of those dudes on the show because they are hilarious and hardworking, and they don't care. They just all that's one thing I like about the fellas is that they are who they are. Like they don't hide much at all, and so hopefully I can get that happening one day. So yeah, so poetry.
Mhm.
What's some of the work that you've done? What's some of the artistic work that you've done in poetry?
Um, so most of my poetry has been like autobiographical, in that I'm telling my story, who I am, how I came to become this poet and really embrace poetry. and I'm getting more out there. Like I've told my story. My first book was my story, and then my second book was, about a broken engagement and what that was like getting out of a deep place after something like that happens. And I'm branching out more into sensual poetry because I really enjoy that art form. It's not just like erotic or
Mm-hmm.
pornographic poetry like some people think, but it's a whole experience. You're really engaging the senses through poetry, and you could do that with performance added as well. But I really just enjoy the sensual poetry art form, so I'm really diving into that area a little bit more.
Central poetry. Is this like a new genre, or how long has this been around? I've never heard of it.
Yeah. I'm not really sure how long it has been around. I've known of it,
Okay.
um, mostly in the performance side, though. Like if you go to a burlesque show, they may have somebody who's doing poetry on the mic while the burlesque dancers are performing. Sometimes you have it at like these very small poetry lounge type things.
Okay.
Um, Jazz cafes, that kind of vibe. But yeah, it engages all the senses. Gives you a chance to talk about sex because it's still kind of
Mhm.
taboo in certain areas and not feel shame or guilt around it. Like a lot of people have sex, a lot of people are sexually aroused, and it's just embracing that in a positive way.
Okay, cool. That's what's up. Do you have any of that poetry available?
Yes, yeah. I just put out a poetry book. It's called Taste. It's my first sensual poetry book, and it is just a taste of the sensual poetry that I've written. And I also did an audiobook to also engage some of those other senses as well.
Okay, where can you find that at? Where can you find that
Yeah,
whatever?
Taste is the paperback book is on Amazon, and then the audiobook I went through Findaway Voices, which is through Spotify.
Hmm.
So it's on like 36 different platforms, but Spotify, Google Play, Apple Books, you can find it almost anywhere. You just have to search it. Yeah.
Okay. What's some other poetry that you've done? What's some other works?
Um, so If Tears Could Talk was my first book.
Mm.
That one is also on Amazon, and that one was again just the autobiographical autobiography told through poetry and prose. And then Out of the Deep is my second book that is also on Amazon. That one was a little bit more personal because it was about a very life changing time for me, and getting to like a deep dark place and getting yourself out of it, which a lot of people can relate to for different areas or different situations in their life. And then I write poetry with Poets Portal. We do nature poetry, we do grounding poetry, just anything that you experience. You just present what it is that you have. Whatever you're going through, you write poetry to reflect that. So,
And this is online, like just a lot of people who get together, almost like a clubhouse kind of thing, where they just do their poetry, like over the internet.
most of our meetings have been in person. So there's actually a tech venture makerspace. It's off of Wayne Trace. They have you could do welding, there's pottery, all these
Mm.
different art forms like visual art or hands-on art, and we do our meetings, we do a lot of our events at that place because it makes sense. Like you have all these different types of creatives coming together, and they get to explore the makerspace as well.
Mm.
um but yeah, Poets Portal, we're key our key thing is to bring people together and share space, like physical space with
Okay.
each other. So
How
every
many
bit
people?
of
Sorry, how many people go to that group?
so there are 6 founding members, and we have, it really depends on the event, but I want to say we've had as much as like 100 people at an event.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a, like you said, I have noticed that too, the shift where people are more open to poetry scenes and just wanting to
Yeah.
see that raw expression. So it's been really really nice to see people very receptive to our collective and what it is that we do.
Yeah, and it seems like it's not only just like it won't just be like a group of just poets. It'll be like a mixture of all people who are invested in the arts. Like it'll be some singers there. You'll see some hip hop artists, some artists who draw and paint, and it's just this huge blend of like just well, not entertainment but art. And I think it's really cool when everyone comes together to express themselves in that type of way. Yeah, it's really cool. So, what do you do now? Like, what do you work? What's just interested in who you are?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I am currently a part-time caregiver for my grandmother. She's elderly and has just she needs someone there for her pretty much 24/7. Part of aging, you know. So that's what I'm doing mainly as like my job. And then I am very heavily involved with Poets Portal as social media. I do the treasury side of things and just collaborations overall. But I'm going to be stepping back into the workforce, you know, I guess corporate America
Okay.
workforce here soon. Um, I don't know what I'll be doing yet, but I was working social work jobs before that. And it just got to a point where I felt like we were forgetting or ignoring the people and focusing more on paperwork deadlines, numbers, you know, just that kind of stuff. And I wasn't interested in that anymore because I'm like, we're not servicing and helping people. We're just trying to get through things as fast as we can to meet these deadlines and make sure paperwork is done. So,
Right. Well, being a artist and trying to transition into work, I've noticed that it's tough for people to do that because you're so creative, and creativity takes time. Whereas when you're working, it's like this input output activity that they want from you. They don't necessarily want your perspectives or opinions. I can see that being tough for artists. I see a lot of artists who are, they call them struggling artists,
yeah.
because they're not working, right? Because they can't work because they don't want to be inside of that space where they can't express themselves creatively. Um, I see, like, a lot of people who, especially like with the people who are into, like, let's say they are in the technology space, like they have that. I've noticed, like, at Google and a lot of these different companies, they have these, like, artistic expressive areas for people where they're just not doing work. They can actually express themselves, and they can draw on their break, or they can listen to poetry or music or read books and stuff like that. I think that's the only way they're going to bring you geniuses back into the workspace, is if they have some places for you to do that. So okay, I noticed that you have that ribbon on your shirt. What is that all about?
Yeah, so this is teal ribbon. It's an umbrella for a lot of different movements. Like I know ovarian cancer is under the same survivor ribbon, but this is for me specifically is for sexual assault survivors. And I've noticed like over the past year or so, I've stepped into that advocacy a lot more, leaned into it. This year was one of the most empowering that I've had,
Mm-hmm.
just engaging with a lot of different survivors of all kinds. Like they could be a survivor of a couple months to years, you know, and it's just been rewarding overall, sharing space with them.
Are you a survivor yourself?
Yes, yes, I am. 11 years,
11
11 years
years.
survivor.
Okay. Uh, it's a lot of people who are survivors, and I take it we're talking about sexual assault survivor, right?
Yes.
Um, that's tough. I mean, I hear so many people having to work through that and struggle through that. It's just not enough support that you can offer when people have, especially at a younger age, when they've had to deal with that, being able to work through that. So, yeah, thanks for doing it. I think that's going to help a lot of people out. Would you like to kind of share a little bit about that? Like, has the person been apprehended? Because I know a lot of people are sexual assault survivors, and that person is still out, right? Or
Mm.
that person hasn't had to come to terms with what they've done. Has your person been, yeah?
Uh, I did not pursue the legal route.
Okay.
I was 17 when this
Okay.
happened to me. And it was another young woman that was the same age as me when it happened. And I didn't fully understand at that time what I had exactly experienced. So I just stuffed it for years. And it wasn't until I got to college and that move, everything just like came to the surface that I had been burying from childhood and being at home with my parents. And that was a really rough year. My freshman year of college was rough for that reason. And I've got myself into therapy starting my sophomore year of college. And that's when I really started to realize what exactly had happened to me and other things as well. And so at that point, I just felt like it was too late. I thought it was too much for me. I didn't know if I could handle it,
Right.
going the legal route. And so I just had to figure out, what does that mean for me? How do I move forward with my life without going this route?
So this person was your age, or were they older?
Um, Older by like a couple months, but yeah,
Oh,
were
okay. So when this, because when I first started talking to you about this, I was thinking maybe it was a guy, but because you don't hear a lot of sexual assault stories with the same sexes.
this was a young woman that I was very much interested in. We had been talking for months, built a relationship, everything, and this was part of her plan as well, to
Oh.
lower my guards, because my guards were up with other things. I had experienced breakups and whatever else,
Mhm.
high school drama.
Okay.
And the fact that she was also another young woman who was interested in girls like I was, that lowered my guards quite a bit. And so I
Okay.
trusted her with a lot of things. We had talked and got to know each other for months. Um, and I had invited her over to my house because it was a day that my school had off that. I went to a private school, and so my school had it off, but public school still went, and my parents were going to work. So I knew that I was going to be home alone, and I wanted to just
Right.
spend some one-on-one time with her because, again, I couldn't do that, as my dad told me, you're not allowed to be engaging in these types of activities.
Right.
So I was like, this is a perfect opportunity for us to just have some alone time. But I wasn't expecting any, like, nothing sexual. I wasn't anticipating any of that. I wasn't interested in that yet.
Right.
Even at 17, some people started a little bit earlier than I did, but
Mhm.
I was scared. Really, I
Right.
was.
Well, I don't want you to go too deep into detail because I don't want you to relive that stuff. But I get it. Push comes to shove. You went to a space, because you wanted to get to know this person. You were kind of a like what kids do. It doesn't mean that you want to have any type of sexual encounter, but this
Right.
person forcefully pursued you, and it put you in a predicament because you were scared, and you ended up having this situation happen, and you didn't want it to happen. I understand. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry that that happened to you. I don't want you to have to relive that. That sucks to have to go back through that. But I just wanted to know because of just out of curiosity, I'm sure a lot of people want to know how does that happen with two people, two women. I guess I've never heard that before, and I think that's cool that you are strong enough to actually speak on that because some people maybe even in your own community would disagree and say like no way so I mean I think that's very cool that you are willing to kind of stand up and be a survivor and at least get the support that you need and you're not keeping it to yourself, you're putting it out there in the world and you're trying to help other people get past it. Man, that's tough. So what do you see yourself doing in the future?
Um, Definitely continuing with the advocacy of sexual assault survivors. That's a huge thing for me because I am a survivor. And the reason why I'm so vocal now, it took me a long time to get to this point, is because when I started to tell people or let them know, like, hey, this happened to me, whatever, there were people who just flat out told me that I was lying or that they didn't believe me because they had never heard of, a sexual assault happening between two
Mm-hmm.
women, two girls,
Right.
two young women. And it's like, these things do happen. It is possible. And I want to make sure that even adolescents are aware of that too, because I was a teenager when this happened to me. So it's like, I want to make sure that they know, if this happens, this is
Right.
what it is.
And that person was in your inner circle, so people didn't believe you because that person was a part of your community, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's tough. See, you're a fighter. That's a tough fight right there when you are trying to stand on your values and your moral compass and be honest about something, but you got the world telling you no, they can't be true. That's why when you told me that, I was like, wow, I've never heard that before. A lot of
Right.
people in that situation would definitely overlook that, especially since your community can be kind of sensitive, when it comes to like they are fighters. So I can see that being a tough fight for you to speak your truth. So that's what's up. So you want to stay into the sexual assault survivor realm. Any other avenues that you want to get into?
Continuing with poetry,
Mm-hmm.
so presenting and writing poetry. I'm working on my book number 4, but
Okay.
it'll be a while before that one comes out. And I really would like to be able to just live off of creativity. That's like a very small percentage of people who are able to do that. Um,
Right.
but I would love for that to be able to be a career, for myself. So I'm pursuing different avenues creatively to be able to make that somewhat possible. And then I guess in a more career corporate America type, I would go back to social work. I would, because I really love working with kids and adolescents, and anything that pours into or waters children is like near and dear to my heart too, because I want to see kids thrive and not just survive.
Okay, that's cool. Well, it sounds like you are an incredible human being and you have a lot to offer, and especially with the poetry, helping kids. I think that's a great combination to bring that together. So, man, that's super cool. Um, what do you think about like the way that like our government is dealing with, like our LGBTQ community? What do you think about that? It's very controversial these days.
Yeah, it is disheartening because, like you touched on the historical aspect, queer people have been around since forever. This is just a part of humanity. Um, and we've gone through so much and cycles of like acceptance. Okay, actually, no, the tide is turning again. And it's exhausting, honestly. We just want to live. We're not trying to indoctrinate anybody. We're not trying to turn people out, as some people say. Like, that's not our goal. Our goal is just to be able to live and thrive and exist without all this pressure, all this prejudice, all these different things that other groups experience as well. Like, we just want to live. Like, that's ultimately what we want.
So, how is this new administration? How are they affecting your community directly? Can you kind of speak to that?
I think the biggest is how trans people are being treated, services that are being stopped for them, or even just the way that they're viewed. It's just very, it's skewed. It's like fear, panic, like for no reason. These are real people. These
Mm.
are real people. These are human beings. And they just want to live and be able to walk down the street, go to the store, go to work, and not
Right.
have to worry about, you know, them like I can't speak for trans people because that's not my experience,
Mm.
but being within the community and being an ally to trans people, these are the things that I've heard or that I've seen. And it's disheartening to know that they have extra worries when they're going into certain public spaces, or how am I going to be perceived? Am I going to have to fight today? Am I going to argue with somebody simply because of how I am presenting or
Right.
who I am? And I don't think the administration is helping with that at all by putting this image that they are so other that it's strange.
Well, they say it's
Mhm.
mental illness. That's the conservative argument, is that this is mental illness and there is a nurture side of this that no one's paying attention to, and it's a negative side of nurturing. They're saying like maybe the children who grow up as transsexual people, they were sexually assaulted at a young age, or they were in an unhealthy environment growing up, and it's this induced mental illness that takes over where they're not comfortable with who they are. I mean, The Trump administration even pulled the bathrooms out of the White House. There was a transsexual or LGBTQ bathroom that was a safe space for those people, and that was one of the first orders that he put in place, was pulling that bathroom out.
Mhm.
So yeah, I see, and it says that only 5% of people in the United States are actually transgender. Um, and that's the other argument, is that they don't think that 5% of people should be able to uh, change the way that we operate in this country. They shouldn't be able to change our culture because there's such a small margin of people versus the rest of the people who are not transgender. What do you say to that?
The mental illness argument, it really enrages me.
Okay.
Yeah, it is frustrating. I can never know 100% what that is like. You
Mm-hmm.
know, what being a trans individual is like, and the hardships that they face even internally. Um but for people to take that and say like, oh, it must have been because of a trauma you experience, or it's a mental illness that you have, I can only imagine how that makes them feel. Because I know how it makes me feel. And that's not my lived experience. Um, and I would say, as far as the percentage of people who are transgender and or trans, and what how they shouldn't be able to shift things or accommodate to them because they're such a small percentage, I the way that I view things is, as long as we have people, no matter how small the percentage is, these are human beings who deserve to live and have opportunities and protections like everyone else who is the majority. So
Right.
I think that regardless of how what percentage of our population they are, they should we should accommodate them. We should
Yeah.
change things for them. And I would say that about anybody who's even like a 0.1% of the
Right.
population. It's just being inclusive is key to moving forward, I think.
No, I agree. My first impression of that argument was it made sense to begin with.
Mm.
But it's almost like a sleight of hand argument, because your first knee jerk reaction would be, yeah, 5% shouldn't change the rest of the 95% of the people. It shouldn't change the culture. It shouldn't. They shouldn't be able to have that type of strength to put policies in place that upset the balance of what we view as normal. But I say that's a sleight of hand argument, because when you really think about it, uh, it, it the moral side of things, the way that all the things that we fought for, marginalized people have fought for throughout the history of this country, black people exclusively, the things that we fought for. I mean, we reshaped this whole culture from a marginalized standpoint. This country would not look like it does today for anyone if it wasn't for the African American contributions to the history and the changes of this society. So when I really think about that, when I really took some time to think about that, I was like, no, we actually should uh, give people who are marginalized an opportunity to change the culture, to put certain political structures in place and safeguards to make sure that they can experience the same freedoms that we all experience. And I think that a lot of people, especially on the conservative side, they really need to take a deeper look into that, right? The
Mhm.
things that they are agreeing to, because it's all good on one side and then it's not on the other side. I always say that about policies and things, is that that policy might, the policy that you want in place, it might help you now, but it might hurt you later, right? In just different circumstances. So yeah, I think that I had to change my whole viewpoint on that. So I'll admit that it's tough, though. I can see it being very tough for transgender people and even LGBTQ people, because where's that at? It says that 45% of LGBTQ children have thought about suicide, right? Um, so that means that that's a really huge social health issue that we're dealing with when we got 45% of LGBTQ kids worrying about whether or not they want to exist or not. Can you speak to those children and tell them something encouraging? Can you inspire them if they're listening to this?
Yes. So if you are a queer child, LGBTQ plus child, you are valuable, you are needed, and the world is better with you in it because your existence alone is revolution and a rebellion and empowering to other people like you.
Excellent, excellent. Um, so along with that topic, another huge topic is, and I hate to just lay on this, but I mean, we've talked about the poetry and your creative side. I do want, if you do have some poetry, I would like to hear a small one if you have it.
Okay.
If you be willing to. I always try to put people on the spot. Maybe we can do that in a second. But I did want to ask you about the gender reaffirming surgery. That's a huge topic, especially with conservatives and the current administration. Is they're putting all types of blocks in. If it's gentlemen who are in prison who want to get sex changes, and I think that's not the right word for it. I think it is just gender reaffirming care. Correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll try to use that. I'm not trying to be offensive towards anyone, but let's say gender GR. I don't know, GRC, gender reaffirming care. Let's call it GRC, okay? Because that's tough. So they're trying to stop the GRC from taking place with men who are in prison, soldiers, kids who are growing up who feel as though they're in the wrong bodies and they want to get the surgery. How is that going to affect the LGBTQ community?
I know that it's harmful to trans individuals who want to go that route
Mm-hmm.
because for those individuals, this can be the final, like, my body feels how it should. I'm in the body that I wanted to be in, or I should have been in all along. It is an affirmation of who they are. But for those who don't go that route, because not every trans person, that's not always their goal, or what they feel completes them. There are some who are just like, I am a trans individual, and how they present themselves, that is them. That's they're comfortable with just who they are. um it just adds to, again, our community. We just have to come together to be able to support those individuals who are wanting to pursue that and really fight against these blocks that are being put in place, like we always have when it comes to different things that our community has faced, like being able to be married to each other, and other laws and legislation that we really tried to spearhead, for our community. It just, it's exhausting, it's disheartening, it can add to this, like, why do I have to go through this? Do people really want me here? Kind of mentality, which is frustrating to have to deal with. But as an ally to the trans community, I will just continue to fight for them and support them the best way that I can.
Yeah, I mean, this week they're just now starting to remove soldiers who are transsexual out of the military. That's crazy. So you've got these men and women who have worked their tails off, and who are defending our rights at home, and they have representation back here. They're fighting for their communities and people who are in their same situation. And they're being kicked out of the military. I think that's an open door to kick them out of other places. And I can see that policy expanding to kick out gay people in the military, period, if that's not already the case. I mean, because so it's really wild times that we are living in. And there you go. That's what I mean by how that policy is okay until it's not okay, right? Because if you can, like, we can sit back as African American people or Hispanic people or whoever and we could say like, oh, okay, well, it's not me, right? But who's to say that they don't start saying, you know what, we don't want minorities in the military, you know? Furthermore, we don't want minorities enlisting in the draft. We don't want minorities going to this place, that place. All of a sudden, we could roll ourselves all the way back to pre-60s conditions, right? Just because we all don't come together and stand up for what's right. I mean, look at like how all of these like it was a large amount of Latino people who supported this administration and the policies that they thought were going to be for them, and now 4 or 5 months later they're all over the internet upset because their family members are being sent to Venezuela, to a Venezuelan prison camp, right? And then it's like this aha moment, like, wow, this is really messed up. I just urge people to start thinking beyond themselves and show a little empathy when it comes to other people's situations and not just stand on the sidelines and not say anything, because it could easily flip right back onto you. Even that being said, we have a lot of Caucasian individuals who voted for Trump, who thought that it was the right choice, whether that was for money or for more money or ideological win that they wanted with this administration. And now, when you look at these town hall meetings everywhere, you've got these individuals who are mad. Like, I didn't know that you were talking about firing all of the federal, employees, or, yeah, kicking all these people, kicking soldiers, not even just the LGBTQ people in the military. They're actually getting rid of soldiers in the military, period, if they don't feel like you are of value, or if they need to make a budget cut. They don't really care. And I think that's what people are starting to see, that, this current political condition is destroying lives at a rapid pace. So I don't think it's just I think that might be the positive side of this, is that when you have this tyrannical type of situation that's taking place in our White House, it's going to bring people together, right? And we're possibly going to start coming together and fighting this fight, no matter what color we are, no matter what our religious background is. It's going to be, we need to just get these guys out. I'm praying for the midterms. Now, if the Dems don't flip the midterms, we are, I don't know what to say, right? I mean, think about that, right? We could have some way bigger issues if the Democrats do not shape up and flip the midterms over. It can only get worse at this point. And I got to be honest, I wasn't totally against the Trump administration, because I'm a swing voter, right? So I kind of go like, this policy's okay on this side. The Democrats, okay, I like that policy. But after just a few months, I didn't vote for him, though, just to let you know. I didn't. I ended up not voting for him because I started seeing things. I was like, this ain't, just like last time. It's going to be a bunch of stupidity, in the White House. It's going to be, you know, tweets every day and arguments and all this stuff. So I said, I really can't morally vote for a guy who's grabbing women, models, in that sexual assault. Like, you admitted to it on TV that you grabbed a person without them wanting to, because you can, but you can become president. Anyway, that's another story. But yeah, it could just get a lot worse for us. Honestly, it could get pretty bad for us. So I don't know. It's a crazy time. But yeah, so I did have a question for you. What the hell is that making that noise? Oh, it's my son. I did have a question for you though. When we were talking about the gender reaffirming care, do you think that it's an age appropriate time for a child to, receive that care?
Um, I don't really, I don't think I know enough to be able to comment.
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
because I know that there's things that have been rolled back in terms of like, smoking. Now it's
Right.
21 versus 18, and they say like your frontal lobe isn't fully formed until you're 25,
Right.
you know. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that experience is like for those kids, and what the steps would look like, for them to have the surgeries and parental guidance and all of that. I don't know.
Because that's one of the major arguments, or even one argument that I kind of totally understand is that, at a certain age, if you can't drink, you can't smoke, why should you be able to, get a sex change, or, be able to get the gender reaffirming care if you're not even of age to consent to even? Have sex, so that's a huge topic. And I think, to me, I kind of feel like, you know, each side has to have a give and take, in order to work together. Just like when, say for instance, like when they pulled back the Roe versus Wade deal for women and said that you couldn't have abortions. But in all reality, it's abortions up to a certain time, right? So it has to be like a give and take with the government. And I kind of think that it would be helpful if, maybe the community did kind of back off and say, well, okay, maybe 16 or 17 is an age defined, because sometimes we just get ourselves into deep water when we like let a 6-year-old or 7-year-old start taking pills to change their biology. It's just going to raise a lot of problems with people. Even if that's your child and you want your child to do that, it's just going to be a hot button political topic, and you're never going to win that one, especially with the A, B, and C that I just mentioned. The kids can't be able to do this, but now they can get this. So I don't know. I just always, that was one of the more interesting things that I didn't get to discuss with you. But like you said, I think you answered it well. You said, I just don't have enough knowledge on it, and that's fair enough. Yeah.
I know most I could get close to that is like my experience of being a queer child and like
Uh-huh.
the different evolutions that I went through. Like the first time that I was able to put a label to who I thought I
Mhm.
was bisexual. And then the more that I learned about the community, was immersed in the community, I was like, that doesn't fit me, so it's like you have these different evolutions until you become like fully centered in who you are, like in my queerness. Like there is no question now. I'm fully sit comfortably in it, and I know exactly who I am. And I think even as a teenager looking back, like I was not that same person that I am today. So I could see the argument for like patience, like just wait, to delay it, because you never know in the future who you're going to be, or where you're going to be at. So
Right.
I could see the argument for that, but yeah, I can't speak to that experience fully.
No, I think you said a mouthful with that alone. So, what do you think about the show so far?
I like the conversations that we're having and just like engaging on different topics that I don't really get to talk about all the time. So
Right, right.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. When is your next event?
Next event is May 17th, so next
Okay.
Saturday.
Mhm.
It's a Lovers and Pins R&B versus poetry event. Um,
Okay.
so this is something that's a little bit new, because I don't really step into the performance side of poetry that often. But the fact that it's like a versus round for round, so a poet is going to be going up against a singer, and it's very much grown and sexy. So it'll be sensual poetry that I'll be performing, and all of that. So I'm excited for it.
Okay, okay. Wow. Well, it's been a very fun experience having you on the show. I think you have a lot to offer to the world, and especially SA survivors, and your community. Um, I just really am appreciative of you taking the opportunity to be on Club Geneva. I do want to maybe showcase some of your materials, so hopefully we can get that all set up, because I want to make sure that it's on the front cover, and that I'm posting all your books and some links to where people can buy your products at. So why don't you go ahead and at least tell people, if they want to get in contact with you, how they can do so?
Yes, so I would say the best way to get in contact with me is by Instagram. I have two different ones. My personal, that I also use for business directly, is Johnson Breanna C. That's what my name is on Instagram. Or you can search Queer Black Girl Poet on Instagram as well, and you can access my blog, links to my books and my audiobook. Everything is on Instagram pretty much.
Okay. Do you have an email address where, if someone wanted to contact you, where they could do so?
Yes, it's actually queerblackgirlpoet at gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on. I hope that you can come back soon and share some more updates on your books and some new things that you're doing. But this is the Club Geneva show. My name is Shade. Thank you all for joining in and listening. If you'd like to be a part of the show, just reach out. We'd like to connect with you at clb.geneva@gmail.com. You can also reach out just through the I'm sorry, I messed that up. Whatever. Just reach out to me at clb at clubgeneva.com. I want y'all to have a nice night. Thanks for showing up.